Hi, and welcome to episode 73 of the Give Me a Crown Knitting, Spinning and Bits and Pieces podcast. My name's Nina, also known as Give Me a Crown across the internet, and today is Saturday the 22nd of July 2017. I'm coming to you from the Central Tablelands in the central west of New South Wales in Australia, and it's lovely to have your company. We have a rivalry group for Give Me a Crown, and there's currently an Anything Goes knit along happening in the group, which will be finishing up at the end of July. So feel free to pop by there if you've got any finished objects fresh off the needles or off the crochet hook or off the spinning wheel, and see if you're eligible to enter. I'll be drawing for the prize of a skein of Dingo Dyeworks yarn in the next episode, so good luck to everyone. This week I have 3 finished objects. Yep, 3 finished objects. I published a pattern, which is very exciting, and I can't wait to share that with you. And I also have a work in progress. So on with the finished objects to start with. And the first one was a hat. So I spoke last time about the hat that I have been designing, and I decided to knit another version because I saw an article in the news about a local charity needing more woolly things. So I thought the perfect opportunity to make something for them would be to test knit my hat one more time and see how it goes. So I went through my stash and I pulled out this yarn, and it's the Four Seasons Superwash Merino 8-ply, which is a DK weight yarn, and this is from Spotlight, which is a craft store here in Australia. This is a very different type of DK weight yarn to the yarn that I'd used previously for the hat, and that's part of the reason why I chose it. This is especially when you can pick it up on sale, it's relatively inexpensive. It comes in 50 gram skeins or balls, and it's a fairly springy yarn, but it's got a very tight twist to it. So I was interested to see how this would knit up, and this is how it looks. So this is the hat, and when I first got it off the needles, it was a bit tighter than my previous version of the hat, and I gave it a soak, and it sort of bloomed out. All the stitches sort of popped, and you can still see the tightness of the twist in there, but it just became a lot fluffier than what it had been straight off the needles. I was really surprised when I gave this a soak because it actually bled, and I don't know if I've experienced that with mass-produced yarns before, where it sort of loses some of the colour in the wash, but this one did. It wasn't a huge amount, so I'm not sure if I'd be too worried sort of pairing this yarn up with a white or a cream, for instance, that it would infect the other yarn, but it definitely did lose some of its colour in the wash, so that was a bit eye-opening. But I'm really happy with how it turned out. So you can see my diamonds going on in there. So that one, that's the original hat that I knit last year, and it's in a hand spun of mine, brown Corriedale, and you can see the diamonds, but they're not that obvious. And from that I made a few adjustments to make this version with some Miss Click Clack Darling Road DK, and this brown one I wore a lot last winter, and this grey one I've been wearing lots and lots and lots this winter. It's been my go-to hat when I go outside, and this is a third version. So essentially the grey and the nectarine, which is the colorway name, they're essentially the same, but just the type of DK yarn sort of hangs a little bit differently. So the Miss Click Clack is a bit more drapey, and the high twist in this makes it a little bit more firm, but it's still a sort of a slouchy hat. The dimensions are almost the same as that one. But it was an interesting way to test out my pattern, just to sort of see what would happen if somebody used a different type of yarn. And I'm really happy with the result. So once I had done that one, and the rooster's going off again. The rooster has been missing recently, so I'm not sure whether it had gone for a holiday or not, but it's back again. So hopefully it's not bothering you too much. So once I'd done that, I decided to hit the go button on my pattern on Ravelry, and I decided to publish it for free because it hasn't been testnet. And I think a psychology student would probably have a field day trying to figure out why I didn't get this testnet, because I had the pattern written up and it would have only taken a few weeks to sort of go through that process, and it would have given me a lot of reassurance that things were okay with the pattern. But somehow I think sitting on the pattern for so long, and just the idea of putting it out there made me a little bit anxious. And I don't know how publishing it to the world is better than publishing it to testnetters. But somehow I think with the number of different things involved in getting a pattern written up for the first time, and figuring out how Ravelry works with publishing patterns, the idea of having the sort of the first time getting something testnet, just having so many new things all together at once was just a little bit too much for me. So I just decided to publish it. And I was a little bit nervous doing putting it out there, but I'm really happy with how it went. I'm actually completely overwhelmed by how it went. Let's put it that way. In the first 24 hours, the pattern was viewed over 3,000 times, which I didn't expect at all. I thought maybe 20 people might have a look and grab a copy, but a lot more people saw it. And I don't entirely understand why or how, but they did. And some people mentioned it in forums in Ravelry, and people were queuing it and favoriting it and leaving comments, and I was just a little bit stunned. After 24 hours, it had popped onto the Knitting Hot Right Now page, and I think it got up to number 3, which as well was just not something I expected to see. So obviously getting there helped more people find it, and just the reaction was completely strange. I was doing happy dances around the house, and then also had a few nerves about the fact that I hadn't had it testnet, and I was hoping that I hadn't disappointed a whole heap of people by putting it out there like that. But thankfully a couple of people cast it on straight away and whipped it up in about 24 hours, and it was fantastic to see that when they'd finished their hats, they were as I expected them to be. So there were some wonderful comments about the knitting process involved, and that sort of eased my nerves a little bit. But I would definitely recommend, if you're going to publish a pattern, get it testnet to avoid those sort of nerves while waiting to see what happens. But then I think that it probably would have taken me another year to pluck up the courage to put it out to test knitters. So I did what worked for me, and hopefully nobody minded too much. But there are a lot of people out there now who have got a copy of my pattern, which is called Windshield, by the way. I forgot to mention that, I think. So it's called Windshield because there are diamonds on it, and there's a song that I love, which is about diamonds on my windshield. And so it's just a bit of a nod to that. And it was a song that was going through my head as I was knitting the original version. So that's that. So yes, so my pattern's out there, and I think this is a little bit rambly because it's all a little bit much, but if anyone does cast it on, and if they do have any problems with the pattern, then obviously I'd love to know about it. My intention isn't to have a dodgy pattern. I do want people to be able to knit the hat. It's not a beginner pattern, but I've tried to write it in such a way that an adventurous beginner would be able to follow through the steps, and they might need to reference a few things online, but for the most part it would hopefully be followable. So it's knit from the top down, which is not the most common way of knitting hats, but I like it. It goes through into cables and textures, and then it has a folded brim. So it keeps your ears warm, and the brim can be adjusted for height. So it'll be free for a little while longer. I'm not sure when I'll feel confident enough to put a price on it, but I will at some point, because there was a lot of effort that went into creating it. And but yeah, I'm really happy that it's free. I've definitely enjoyed a lot of free patterns in my time on Ravelry and elsewhere around the internet, and I definitely appreciate them. And I've knit patterns that haven't had many people knit them previously, so I'm happy to put it out there for a little while to support the knitting community that has supported me so much. But I have a hat, I have a pattern. So yes, that's that. So my next finished object is a pair of socks. So there's two. So these are my entry into the Miss Click Clack Tricolour Block Sock Knit Along. So these use 3 colours of Miss Click Clack yarns. They're in the Merry Creek sock base, and I think they're amazing. So I've got a dark brown, a dark grey, an Ansel Adams, a speckled white with black and grey on it. And I've spoken about these a fair few times. I finished them off a few weeks ago now, so I've forgotten all the details, but I've put them into my Ravelry project page. I think it was a 64 stitch cast on. I've knit these with 9-inch circulars, and I went up to the 2.5mm size because I was getting a very tight gauge on 2.25mm. I found that my gauge was much better on the 2.5mm. But I did, as I was sort of finishing these up, I found that I was getting a bit tighter and tighter with my gauge. So if I compare, so the one on the top was the second, and you can see that there's a little bit of a difference. So it's probably a centimetre difference in the foot circumference on the second one, and that's just me getting so excited with my knitting that I knit tighter and tighter. It's not a huge problem. They still fit fine. For socks, I don't find that much of a difference to cause an issue. So I don't know if other people experience that. Do you knit tighter as you're sort of getting excited and seeing the finishing line? It's something that I've noticed before, and I just need to be a bit more conscious of. But so they're my socks, and I'm very happy with them. I used a jogless stripe method, which I find works well for stripes that are at least 4 rows or more, so you can barely tell where the jog is on the back. So what I do with that is when I change the colour to the new colour, knit one round, and then on the first stitch of the next round I pick up the stitch from the row below onto the needle and knit it together with the next stitch. I've put that as a note in on my project page as well if you want to check it out. So I did the colour changes on the back of the leg and underneath the foot, which I find is the most or least obvious place, even though I'm doing a jogless join. I think it's a good place to do it. You can sort of see a little bit there, but part of that's the angle that I'm holding this at, I think. And when I first did a sock with colour changes like this, I had been worried that you'd sort of feel that, so that's the inside. I'd been worried that you could feel this on the foot, but I don't feel it. I don't notice it at all, and after a bit of wear it'll smooth out anyway, so I find that that's a convenient place to change colours. So yeah, so they're my this year's contribution to the knit along, and a lot of fun. Took me a while, but it was intended to be a pleasurable knit. My next finished object are these mittens. So this is another pattern by me, and I have knit these from some hand spun that I made from fibre from Ren & Ollie, and I'm so happy with how these turned out. I am going to give these to my mum, but I thankfully have this much leftover yarn, so I'm going to have to figure out something to make from that for myself. So these mittens have got lots and lots of amazing stripes of colour. Every single stripe is just a little bit different depending on how much of the different coloured fibres I had managed to put together. So there's some sort of slightly sort of blues, and there's some slightly greenish colours, and there's greys, and then there's everything in between. So these mittens are ones that can be folded up or down, so that depending on what the weather's like or how much access you need to have for your fingers, you can adjust them. And the cuffs are long to keep your hands warm, and these are a little bit short for me because I've knit them for my mum's hand size, and she's got a smaller hand than I do, so my fingers poke out a little bit from the top, but they'll fit her perfectly. My gauge tightened up on these a little bit on the second mitten, so I went from an 8.5 stitches per inch on one hand to 9 stitches per inch on the other, and it's made it just a slight bit tighter, but I was very keen to get it off the needles so that I could finish up the pattern that I was writing and get it off to test knitters. So yeah, so it's a little bit tighter, but I don't think it's not a noticeable huge difference. Out of the blue, my mum emailed me saying that she was enjoying wearing the fingerless mittens that I knit for her for last Christmas, and that was a really nice surprise. I don't know why she sort of did that, but she's on holiday at the moment in the outback of Western Australia, and she was saying that the mittens have been great in the mornings to keep her hands warm, and she said they don't quite look as the colour of them doesn't look as nice as when she got them, but that they've been very handy, and they've obviously gotten a fair bit of red dust on them from being out there, but it's nice that she's wearing them, and I think that she's going to enjoy these ones as well then, because she's wearing them. I didn't know if she'd taken them with her or not on her holiday, but I'm really happy that she did. So these are ready, and I'm going to put them away for Christmas, but I've cast on another pair. So I've sent a pattern off to test knitters to see how they go with it, and thank you very much to those test knitters out there. You are amazing, and I can't thank you enough for what you're doing. It's definitely going to be a lot more relaxing releasing this pattern, knowing that people have tested it and being able to have seen what they've produced. So this is a pair that I'm knitting for me. So it's a beautiful grey, just a tonal grey, sort of darker spots and lighter spots. This is Circus Tonic Handmade's Revelry sock in the Grey Hawk colourway, and I love how it's knitting up, and because it's for me it pretty much had to be grey. I'm almost finished the first mitten, and I should be able to get this finished up tonight, and then I'll cast on the second one so that I'm knitting along with my testers, even though one of my testers has already finished her whole pair, which is just incredible and amazing, and I'm stunned, but amazed and wonderful, like amazed and thankful and all that stuff. So that's how it's looking. So there's a little bit of room in there, and that's a good thing. For colder climates, it's good to have a little bit of air in between the fabric and your body to circulate the warmth. It can be squished up if you want to, or it can be folded up. And this pattern will be released probably around the 8th of August, maybe a day or two later. We'll sort of see how things go. But the reason why I've decided to write these up as a pattern, even though it's a fairly vanilla-ish kind of mitten, is that when I was looking for mittens for myself about a year ago, I couldn't find a very detailed pattern. There's a lot of great free patterns on Ravelry, but what I want to provide is something that somebody who hasn't necessarily knit mittens before can just follow along and do the adjustments to the lengths that they require, and they can come out with a wonderful pair of mittens. So I have put in a fair amount of thought into the sizing and the structure of the mitten, how the thumb gets put in place and all that kind of stuff. So it won't be a free pattern, but it will hopefully be something that people enjoy who haven't necessarily knit mittens before, or who just want a pattern to follow and not have to do the maths and think about it. It will be available in 3 different unisex sizes, so small, medium and large. This is a small. If you're a clever knitter, you can quite easily adjust it sort of down or up in size as well. So it's a flexible pattern, especially in regards to how long to knit the various parts. So yeah, the test knitting's underway, and I'm very excited to be able to get that pattern out as well. I've got a few other patterns in mind, so if anyone is interested in test knitting for me, I will have an interesting pair of socks on the way soon, as well as a shawl and another hat. So that's sort of over the next coming months. But if you're interested, then please drop me a note on Ravelry, and then I can ear burn you on Ravelry when those patterns are ready for testers. So on these, I'm consciously adjusting my gauge. I'm making sure that I'm keeping consistent as I go along, and I'll make sure I do that with the second mitten as well. I feel a bit bad that I didn't do that with my mum's mittens, but she'll be okay with that. I think that's pretty much it. Oh, this yarn is, after having knit with the hand spun, I'm finding this yarn just sort of cloud-like. I've used this Revelry sock before and love it, by Circus Tonic Handmade, and although my hand spun is soft, it has a tighter twist, and so this just feels just amazing to work with. So I'm really looking forward to having these so that I can wear them. I think they're going to be great going off on the post office run, so that I can open the letterbox without having to take my gloves off, because that's been the one downside of my gloves with sort of fingers on them is that I can't open the PO box with them on. I have to take them off each time, but these will be handy for getting to the PO box. So that's those. One other thing I thought I would mention is that I've been wearing my Free Spirit jumper a lot, and I've noticed that it's pilling a little bit, and I was sort of staring at it, and it has Circus Tonic handmade, it has Miss Click Clack, and it has Knit Picks on it, and it's only the Knit Picks that seems to be pilling at the moment. So it's a Knit Pick stroll, and it's not sort of crazy pilling, and it's pilling that you can definitely deal with, but it's just something that I noticed. And so then I also had a look at my Quiet Day shawl, and this was a pattern by Minna Sorvala that I knit a few months ago, and this has got Miss Click Clack skein yarn, and then the grey is the Knit Picks stroll, and it's also pilling. I'm not sure, it's not going to come up on camera because it's really not that bad, but I can just see that in comparison to the other yarns, it's just getting this sort of fluffier look to it. So I'm not sure if I would use Knit Pick stroll again for things that will get a lot of friction on them. Although for socks I don't think it matters so much, but I guess it's when it's in combination with other yarns that it just becomes a little bit more obvious that it's behaving a bit differently. But no, I don't think you can see it on there, but I just thought I'd point that out if you're thinking about using Knit Pick stroll for something, that it may pill a bit more than some other yarns, but then I guess that happens with all sorts of yarns. One thing I've been meaning to show for a few podcast episodes, and it just somehow slips my mind, is this shade card from Millpost Merino. So maybe a month ago, they were offering up shade cards on their Instagram account, and I gave them my address and they sent me this wonderful shade card. So it shows the current colours that their yarn is currently available in, and the Millpost Merino is superfine merino grown, spun and dyed in Australia and New Zealand. The sheep are grown in Bungendore on the Southern Tablelands, and their website has a wonderful story about why they're there, how they're there, what they do there, all that kind of stuff. So I definitely recommend checking out their website if you're interested in some very nicely grown yarn. They have a DK and a 4-ply weight, which I wasn't aware of until I started sort of browsing around on their website. So this is the DK weight yarn, and it's soft and springy, and I was having a bit of a play, and it seems to be a 3-ply spun. Is that gonna focus? No, but it looks like there's 3 plies in there, and I'm pretty sure that they're just sort of 3 singles and they've been plied together into the DK or 8-ply sort of weight yarn. It feels wonderfully soft, and there's a fair amount of spring to the yarn, so I think this would be fantastic in garments and cozy shawls. So I'm contemplating which colour I might want to order. I'm actually thinking about getting the natural and doing some of my own dyeing with it. They have that available in some very large hanks, but I also like the greys. I also like the light blue. What's it called? It's called light blue. The light blue might be a nice addition to my wardrobe, to have something made of that. So I think they're very nice samples, and it's always nice to be able to sort of just touch and feel and see the colours for yarn, especially when you're thinking about ordering a larger quantity. So I'm not sure how often they do these shade cards, but if you are interested in them, then check out their website and and get in touch with them. That's Millpost Merino. Apart from that, I think just a little bit of chatter at the end here about country life, what's been happening around here. I've been spotting some footprints in the garden recently, and when I first spotted them, there's sort of these little indents, and I thought, oh, maybe there's a kangaroo or a wallaby that's been hopping around in the yard. But I studied the footprints, and they were sort of spaced apart. So with a kangaroo, you'd get two side by side, and possibly some tail markings on the ground. So they definitely weren't echidnas. I haven't spotted an echidna this winter at all, so I'm not sure whether the mown grass is distracting them, so they don't want to come in here. But somebody had definitely been going through the garden, and when I was driving home last week, I was just about to enter the village, and I could see on the road a little fox. So there was a little fox just sort of sitting. Was it sitting? No, it was standing. It was standing in the middle of the road, and I sort of slowed down, and it scampered off to the side of the road. But I have a feeling I've got foxes in my yard, so I'm not sure exactly what to do about it, whether I need to do anything. Foxes do sort of, I spot them on the roadsides now and then when I'm driving around, but I don't necessarily want them in my yard. They may be going after the neighbours' chooks and roosters, but they're in a good cage, so I'm sure they're fine. But there's a lot of other little animals around here, and there's a sheep in the nearby, so it could be that they're after the sheep, and that's not very nice. So not too sure what to do about the foxes. So I guess that's country life. The local lamb population is definitely exploding. I included some footage at the end of last episode showing how there had been some mama sheep, and then some lambs turned up, and then some more. So over the last few weeks I've been monitoring the lamb situation, and they're definitely increasing in numbers. So I'm not sure whether the local farmers are they bring in lots of new sheep, and they tend to be pregnant, and they just multiply. A lot of the mamas seem to have twins, and they're a lot of fun to watch. Just they run after the mamas and buck them as they're trying to get some milk and everything. It's very cute. But I'll put some footage in at the end. I'm gonna wrap up. I think I've been babbling a lot. I'm still very happy about the fact that I managed to get a pattern published, so check out Windshield on Ravelry if you're wanting to cast on a hat, and check out the Anything Goes Knit Along thread if you are finishing up any projects. I'll be back in a couple of weeks, possibly a little bit less, so that I can get the drawing for the Anything Goes Knit Along done, and hopefully announce when the fingerless mitts will be released. And I hope that you're well and keeping yourself busy with lots of yarny goodness, and I'll see you soon.